Be the Bridge community. I am grateful to have another great guest. I'm just telling you, I just feel so blessed. We should feel blessed. There are some incredible people out here doing some amazing things. There are some amazing books that are being written that's going to help us, it's going to equip us, it's going to grow us. And I feel that this next guest is a part of that. She is doing that. She is doing a lot of educating in her writing and also on the Instas. And so if you're not following her, you need to make sure you do. Her name is Jasmine Holmes, and it's a pleasure to have you here on the Be the Bridge podcast. Just to give you a little information about who Jasmine is, she's the author of Carved in Ebony, Lessons from the Black Women Who Shape Us, and Mother to Son, Letters to a Black Boy on Identity and Hope. I could that right there. I need to buy a few of those. She is also a contributing author for The World on Fire, Walking in Wisdom of Christ When Everyone's Fighting About Everything, Identity Theft, reclaiming the truth of our identity in Christ, and His Testimonies, My Heritage, Women of Color on the Word of God. So she's been busy. And she also, listen, I just found this. She has two books, one book that already came out this year that she's going to tell us about, and another one that is coming out. Those of you who are listening, if you're authors or you know the process of writing, the fact that she is here breathing in front of this microphone, I don't even understand it. And she has three young ones. Jasmine and her husband Philip are parenting their children in Jackson, Mississippi. The M, the I, the cricket letter I. I'm telling you, you got to tell us about what's going on in Mississippi too.
Oh my goodness, so much all the time.
Yes, so much history flows through
Hmm.
Mississippi, and there's a lot to say about that. I'm following this case that they're dealing with now.
Yeah.
Kind of like it's a lynching case. I forget his
Hmm.
name. Maybe we can talk about it at the end if you know. I think it's Rashim, the young man's name, but. I am so grateful to have you here now. We always get the bios, but there are things that we miss out when we say that. So tell the Be the Bridge audience a little bit more, maybe something I left out of who you are, what you do, and I know you are a history teacher. So tell us a little bit about this and how all of this came to be.
Yeah, it's been kind of a wild ride since 2020 for sure. I was a teacher for 9 years. I've been out of the classroom for the past 2 years, and it has been so sad. I like every time I'm in the pencil aisle or anything at any store, I'm like, oh, school
Yeah.
supplies, I miss it. So I'm hoping to get back into the classroom, but it's a really fraught environment right now with everything that's going
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
politically and with education. So I'm just taking a step back and regrouping for sure.
Yes.
My three boys are 6, 4, and 18 months old.
Wow.
They are adorable, wonderful. We just found out that my middle son has autism, and it has been so cool to see his brain in an entirely new light, and like to just see how fascinating he is. It's made life really interesting and really full. And then my 18-month-old is just starting to communicate, and so that's really fun. But that's my day to day is really just those three kids.
There's a young lady, I think Moms of Joy podcast that I follow
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram that talks a lot about autism, and I've just watching her, and then I follow several people because even though it's not my story, it's people in my community, people in my life, it is their story, and so
Yeah.
it's just to make myself aware,
Mm-hmm.
so that as I encounter people that I understand,
Yeah, absolutely.
and then to really have empathy, and I know a lot of times she's talking about when she's taking her kids out. her son out, and just some of the stares because he's a little older, but he's not fully potty trained. Just different things like that.
Yeah.
And I think you could be just that could be a resource for so many other parents that are going through similar things, that you're not alone in this. And so, thank you for sharing that with
Yeah, for
us.
sure. For
Yeah, yeah.
sure.
So, one of the things you on Instagram, you say that you center Black stories and history. You highlight the faithful. I love that. You highlight the faithful and you check the footnotes. I want to hear about, okay, and tell us a little bit about the, like, how do you, what is your process and what you share? Because I'm like, okay, she is giving like a full on history lesson.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because there's a couple of things that you were sharing about. I was like, I just wrote about that, you know, and we talk about a lot of those things in our academy and in our trainings.
Hmm.
But this is like, I don't understand if people understand the wealth of information that they're getting from you, because you are reading, I mean, a lot of books
Hmm.
to give highlights of this, like, you know, of highlights, and you're doing a lot of the work for people, you know, and and you're putting it together so beautifully on Instagram. Tell us, when you say you check the footnotes, tell me a little bit about that.
So I grew up
Uh,
in a very sheltered white evangelical context. So like my dad is a pastor at a church where, you know, I always say like I was the only black girl in the room. There
yeah,
were probably like two or three of us, but you know, it felt like you were the only black one in the room.
right.
And we got a very skewed education, right? A
Mm,
very like the Civil War wasn't fought over slavery.
yes.
Some slaves were really happy, and some masters were like not that bad. And I, as a black woman,
Mm,
there is sort of this complication of. And I try to be really gentle with my younger self because I was
yeah,
surviving in the circumstances that I was in. And so as I say this, I'm saying it with compassion for who I
right.
was and compassion for anybody else who's in the same place. But there kind of becomes this I'm proving that I'm kind of a reasonable black person because I can be unemotional about this
Mm,
part of history. I can say the hard things that are like true. And I remember when I first started checking the footnotes and being like, oh, these things that I always thought were true were not true. And one like really simple one was, you know, I argued with a professor of mine in grad school for like an hour. We were on a field trip at the art museum and he and I were going back and forth. And he was like, the Civil War was fought about slavery. And I was like, no, it was fought about states' rights. And this little scrawny white man was like, it's over slavery. And I was like, no, it's states' rights. And he goes, Jasmine, states' rights to do what?
exactly. What do the states want to do?
What they want to do. And I literally was like, something about tariffs or some, and he was like, tariffs on what? Taxes on what?
Yeah.
Good, where did the goods come from? Where did the, and so he just kind of, it was this moment where like, not in that moment was I humbled enough to kind of be like, oh, you're right. But I went back home and I started reading and I was like, oh, the states actually said exactly why they seceded.
Right. This is it.
Because they weren't embarrassed, they weren't ashamed of what they were doing, like they were very
Right.
open about it. And throughout American history, that's something that I have learned as a, you know, I'm a layperson, right? I'm a teacher, I'm not a scholar in the sense that I'm like I have advanced degrees in history or anything of that nature, but
Uh-huh.
just as a layperson, something that I've noticed over and over again is that in American history, these things that we are ashamed of now, people weren't ashamed of then. And so they were actually really clear with exactly what they
Yeah.
meant and exactly what they were talking about and exactly who they thought of as
Right.
Americans.
Yeah. That is so that is so good. And it just seems like when you hear it, like, because I've heard that story growing up in North Carolina. I didn't hear it as much until I moved to Texas. And
That's where I'm
I
from.
tell this story, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
where I'm
like,
from.
okay, that makes sense, because like I don't know what kind of history they're teaching in Texas, and I could imagine that it's gonna, everybody needs to tune in, because like um but one thing I would say is that there's so many books now,
Hmm.
if they're not being all banned. I'm not, I'm not sure, that's a whole nother
Oh
conversation, but
yeah.
that really can help you, because if you take a pause and you really think about what we're being told and the disservice and who it disserves, like when we're telling these basically just blatant lies
They are.
about history, because if you own it, I mean, we know that the truth sets us free, but and so you're really in bondage, when
Yeah.
you're living a lie. Like there's nothing to gain out of that. And so we know that from our faith, but why are so many in the faith falling for what I call the okie dokie? Like you don't separate these things, So, when you went home and you started reading, what was the thing? When did it start to shift for you? Because for me, I think these were conversations I always had growing up with other Black people,
Hmm. Hmm.
but I wasn't, there were times where, okay, in Girl Scouts I'm the only Black person, or different things,
Sure.
but my community was very diverse. And the churches my grandparents went to were all
Hmm.
Black, so there was this safety net for me. But for you, what was that? Where did it start clicking for you and you started saying, like, wait a minute, I'm missing something? Was the conversation with your white teacher, was that one of the times in your life?
Yeah, yeah, that was one of them. And then meeting and marrying my husband was another one.
Okay.
Because it's one thing to be the daughter of a black man and a sister of a black man, but to love a black man
Yeah.
really brought some things into sharper relief. But my
Okay.
real like fork in the road moment was I had just had my firstborn son
Mm,
when Philando Castile was murdered in
okay.
Minneapolis, and we lived in the neighborhood where he was murdered.
Mm,
And I was on Facebook when the live stream video popped up, and my
wow.
husband was out of the house. So he had left me to go get some food or something and was gone. I was nursing my baby. I'm on Facebook doing whatever. This video pops up. I didn't see the video. Like the feed had just been disrupted when I kind of like tuned in. And I just remember that being the first time where I felt a really visceral
Mm,
fear, like for the baby that I was holding for my husband who was out of the
mm,
house. And this person who had always prided herself in being like, oh, I'm just not, I don't get emotional. Like
mhm,
I wait for the facts. And I had like an emotional response. And
mm,
honestly, even looking back, this, the selfishness of this matters now because I'm in a situation where I have these two black men that I love very much,
mhm.
who I feel are in danger now.
Yeah.
That was my first real moment. And so
Mm,
as my son got older, and as I just started reading more, I'm a voracious reader. And so picking
yeah.
up things and reading and, being homeschooled, you are taught to check the footnotes, right? But I just had very limited books that I was reading. So when the books actually had more thorough footnotes, I would read the footnotes and I would be like, okay, this footnote is getting brought up a whole lot. So I'm going to get online and I'm going to read this source document. And then
Right.
this footnote keeps getting brought up a lot. So I'm going to get online and I'm going to get this book. And so a lot of it was just this self directed, just yearning to know and understand, especially because I had been complicit in spreading things that weren't true.
Mm. That's so good. And I'm glad that you're telling the story, because to me it gives hope for a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
and so many people who are a part of the Be the Bridge community, that is their story, where, I was once blind, but now I see,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense, as it relates to this when we talk about justice and righteousness, And so I think, for me it was like I think the murder of Trayvon Martin was just a turning point for me, where, okay, I'm not just going to have these conversations in the closet with other Black people because I'm afraid of hurting someone else's feelings or losing friends or not being liked. If we're going to be in community and we're a part of the same church, I want you to care about the things that I care about. And I want to know why you're not talking about this,
Yeah.
And then I want to understand why you have that perspective, about this child. So, like, for me, that was what you would say, the catalytic moment for
Yeah.
me. And there's no, once you see, there's no unseeing.
There's no turning back.
there's no turning back.
No.
And I mean, I think Jasmine, you give a lot of hope when you say that you're homeschool. I know several people who, Black people who are homeschooling now because of the conditions of the education system,
Mhm.
right now. And there's so many curriculums. My friend Delina, she does woke homeschooling,
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
just got their
yeah,
youngest for my
yeah,
little
and
boys. Hmm.
before people co-opted the name,
Right.
but we know in our community we understand what it means, and so when you're saying that, when we know that anti-woke is really anti-black,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
absolutely clearly it
Like,
is, and so when you're saying that and you're trying to kind of gaslight people into what this word truly means, and I think you just even I don't know if you did a lesson even on that, but we can talk about that a little bit. But there are people doing some amazing things in communities, and then
mhm.
people actually using her. I mean, white people, all people
Yeah,
that are using this to supplement, because we know that this is not going to be taught in school, and I'm a product of that. So some of this, with the school stuff, it does scare me, but in a way it's like it's never been taught in school. So
never, never.
it's never been taught in school, so but it contributes to the disunity that we have, the apathy that we have, the violence that we have, the trauma that we have. It contributes to all of that. But one of the things you say, you highlight the faithful, and you talk about you dedicate your latest book to the faithful Black women in your life who consistently interrupt the message of shame.
Mhm.
I love that. And can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah. One of the major things when I was growing up was I read so many biographies. I loved biographies, and I love biographies of missionaries, especially. So Gladys Allward, Mary Slessor, George, all of these people. No black people, all the white people. And so I was an adult when I realized that black people had been missionaries at the exact same time as David Livingstone,
Mm,
in the exact same region as David Livingstone. Like, I had no idea.
mm,
And so finding the faithful stories of Black Christians who've gone before just became this really empowering experience for me, a very transformative experience. And it's why I wrote Carved in Ebony, because it was just all of these women and all of these periods of history where Christians had been loud and vocal in their resistance to enslavement and in their resistance to white supremacy. I feel like a lot of times with Christians, when it comes to facing the reality of our history, we feel like, um, maybe I won't say we, but many people feel like if we uncover too much, then it shines a bad light on Christianity, because so often Christians were complicit in these things.
right.
But because of the way that God works,
Mm-hmm.
there's always a remnant. Like, there are
Yeah.
always Christians speaking the truth. There are always Christians standing against, and so I'm always trying to find, okay, who were they? Like, what were they doing? And maybe we can get some better heroes in here. Maybe we don't have to make excuses for Jonathan Edwards or Georgia Whitefield. Maybe there's other options for us to look to.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of one of the major thrusts of my work. And then the dedication for Never Cast Out definitely came from, I just have a community of Black women in my life who constantly disrupt the message of shame in my life.
Mm,
I was a little bit late hopping on for the podcast because one of my friends is having like a professional crisis, and like
uh,
two other Black women. It's like a group chat, and we're all in the group
okay.
chat together. Like, girl, no, hold your head up. Like, we're gonna
Yeah,
get through this.
yeah,
And it's always that way, and that's something that I didn't have growing up, and so it's something that's been such a balm as an adult.
right. And it's such a rich experience, like the connectedness.
Mm-hmm.
I have a text group also, and one of the things that, this text group that I'm in, at one point it was probably about 20 women, it's probably like 12 of us now.
Mm-hmm.
But, I remember at the start of probably, around Charleston, there were, everybody texting each other saying, I'm not going to my church today, because the majority of us at that time were either in predominantly white churches or either in multi-ethnic or multicultural churches.
Mhm.
Um, but we had left, but a lot of us had come out of a predominantly African American church, tradition. And so a lot of people were talking like, I'm not going to church today, and then it was like, okay, of all things, when we're in pain, we should be going to church. But most people were saying they're staying home or they're going to a different church.
Yeah.
And it was because we knew that we were not going to be seen or heard, or recognized. In our pain and in our trauma. And there wasn't going to be a bomb, like it was going to be
Yeah.
like business as usual. And now that whole group, like no one in that group goes to a predominantly white church anymore. Like not, some people have found other churches, some people are still looking, but I'm just like, wow, what, like this is something that I don't know if the church as a whole is going to be able to reckon with until 20 years down
Yeah.
the line, where really the churches that are really growing are like African American churches or multi-ethnic, multicultural churches,
Mhm.
but this resistance to that, what would you say about that? Like what is something that have you had this experience yourself with your
Yeah.
friends, and why do you think this is happening?
This is when I start sounding like the preacher's daughter that I am. White supremacy is such a stronghold.
Yeah,
Like, it's
yeah,
demonic.
yeah.
And whenever I say that, people are always like, okay, Jasmine. But I'm like, no,
No,
it's literally
it's a sin.
demonic.
It's a
It's a
sin.
sin. And it has a chokehold
Yes.
on it has
Yes.
a chokehold on us. I mean, even if we're not, carrying tiki torches in Charleston, the inability to look it in the face and call it what it is and
Yeah.
to move away from it in repentance, that's a
Mm.
stronghold.
Yeah.
And it's
To
just
see
such
it.
a yeah, it is. And
Yeah.
it's evil. Like it
Yeah.
is evil. It is from the pits of hell. And it
Yeah.
is, I think, so much bigger than we want to realize and so much bigger than we want to articulate. Particularly at church, right? Because people hear the phrase white supremacy and they're like, oh my gosh, well, I'm not a racist and I don't hate black people and I don't. It's like, it's there's such a
The
bigger
system.
picture. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's such a bigger picture than what you're seeing. And
Yeah.
one of the reasons why you can't see it is because this is such a stronghold. Like this is
Yeah.
such a national sin. And I think that we have so much focus on other things that are going on nationally and culturally. But we are fighting tooth and nail not to
Mm.
reckon with the
Yeah.
national sin of white supremacy. Like we are
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, I'll do anything not to have to look that in the face.
Yeah. Oh, and don't even say it, because if you
Mm-hmm.
say it, you're making me feel some kind of way.
Yep.
And but it's like in any other thing, we have to name our sin. And
Absolutely.
so, and that's the one thing. There's certain words that I'm like, okay, I'm not going to put my banner in that word. Like, I'm not going to put my banner in woke. Like, there's certain things I'm not.
Yeah.
But I am going to say white supremacy, the system of white supremacy. I am going to say that because we have to name that sin, and
Absolutely.
what it embodies, the indifference that
Mm-hmm.
fuels hate,
That's such a
um,
good word.
like
Yes.
it really, we have to name it. It others people, and we have to be able to recognize it. And that's one of the things that, within our community that we teach. And so if I'm saying white supremacy and you think I'm say I'm saying something about you
Right.
personally, you have to take pause and say, okay, why am I identifying with this?
Right.
And
Right.
ask questions and be curious about it rather than shutting it down
Mm-hmm.
and deflecting or denying or, denounce all the things,
Yeah.
we want you to
Yeah.
denounce, but, but I mean, those are just things that we're saying, take pause and really understand how these systems have been set up. And we know that through history. And I think you're doing a good job of walking people through just some of the history and letting them know some of the unknowns, some of the hidden figures within our history. What is someone that has stood out that you have learned about, especially in the missionary field, um, and within the history of the church that has stood out to you that like, oh my God, I wish I would have known this coming up. This would have done a lot for my self-worth, my self-esteem, my
Mhm.
faith, you know. I mean, just think we're leaving out entire people groups of people. Like
Yeah.
the gospel is for everyone,
Hmm.
but we completely leave out entire people groups,
We do.
when it comes to the history of the
We
church.
do. And there's this whole black missionary group in the
Mm,
Congo in the 1890s. And I, like, before I started reading, I didn't know who King Leopold of Belgium was. I
mm,
had no idea. I didn't know that he was responsible for the deaths of over 10 million Congolese
yes.
people. I didn't know.
And we don't even talk about like
No, I
that
had
was
no
like the first
clue.
Holocaust. Like
It
think about
was.
more people died in that, but we don't even talk about it yet.
While he was sending out messages to the rest of the world and being like, I'm doing all these missionary endeavors and I need money for it. And people were just, I mean, the phrase crimes against humanity
Yeah.
was used for the first time by a black reporter who was talking about what's going on in the Congo. And like,
And it
we
was
have no idea.
brutal,
Yeah.
brutal. And
And there were
we
black missionaries on the ground,
mm,
like on the ground doing crazy things. Like Mariah Fearing was trading a pound of salt for a child's life type of stuff. Just
mm,
like saving lives and translating the Bible into this dialect that it's never been translated
mm.
into. When, as a child growing up in slavery in Alabama, she wasn't even allowed to read the Bible. Come on. Like,
Yeah.
we should know this. Everybody
Yeah.
should know that. It should be like David Livingstone, right? Like, it should
Yeah.
be just common knowledge.
Yeah. There were eyewitnesses.
So many. And
And
they
there's
left so
there's
many written
history, there's
accounts.
receipts.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So while, and then but then what we do, I think, just which is like a double stab in the heart, is we put these people on pedestals and we make monuments of people and not telling the full truth and the
Yes.
disservice that does. And when we look at the country now and we see some of the challenges that are happening, we're like, what's wrong with you? And you can't separate that from the history and the brutality
Yes.
that the Congo has experienced. And when you look at the resources that come from the Congo, when you look at the resources that come from Africa, most countries that are considered the developed countries,
Hmm.
whatever, they are considered developed countries because of the oppression
That
of
part.
other people,
That part.
the stealing of other people. And some of you are listening to this, and this may be hard for you to hear. But I would advise you to lean into this and read about the missionary that she just talked about. There's a book called The Ghost of Leopold. Like,
Oh,
look
yes.
this up. And even sometimes, even when we try to look up stuff, you can't just Google. Like, and if you Google, you have to go down because you'll see a lot of the great things that's propped up about people. And then there are things you have to keep digging to. I'm just doing that with something, just some study in dermatology, like just talking about the
Hmm.
medical field
Hmm.
and how there's this man that's propped up as a hero in the field. And I mean, he's basically doing eugenics, like
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
in
Same thing with
today, in
gynecology.
today, in today, you know.
Oh gosh.
So this is important. So I would advise you not to deflect, not to dismiss, but to lean in and to verify, because most of the things that we're talking about in our books, in our writings, there are scholarly documents on there. There are eyewitnesses to this. There's documentation. One of the things I think you had just posted. I'm just jumping around here, but as we're talking about this, you just posted about just some the enslaved narratives.
Hmm. Hmm.
What led you to do something and to post about that and to tell that story?
So you're going to think that I'm absolutely crazy because I had the book that came out in February
Okay.
and I had the book that's coming out in September
I know, I know.
and I have a manuscript that's due in September
Okay.
as
Okay.
well. So
Oh,
I am
so,
currently yes. Yes.
okay.
This week was spring break too, so I'm just like looking at my computer like I should be writing, but these
Right.
children are on the loose. But so the book that I'm writing that's coming up is dealing a lot with like firsthand accounts and eyewitness stories. I just really wanted to bring stories to life.
Mm.
And I was talking to one of my best friends is a historian, and she is always, I'm always sending my stuff to her and being like, oh, was this, am I saying it right? Is this okay? And she's like, she's always telling me, you are a historian, be confident in that. And I'm like, I know, but I don't have, like, you have an actual PhD. I'm just
Yeah.
out here
Right.
I'm just out here making it do what it do, like by
Right.
myself.
Right.
And but I told her I wanted to write this, and I said, I don't know, like, do you think that I could? And she goes, this is the perfect opportunity to use WPA narratives.
Right.
And she is, so her work focuses on enslaved women in the ways that they defined freedom in the wake of the Civil War. So the way that they literally, one historian calls it voting with their feet,
Mm.
decided to just get up and leave, and led to the Emancipation Proclamation because Abraham Lincoln was like, we got to do something about this. And so that's what her work focuses on. And she focuses on a lot of narratives that were overlooked in the 60s and 70s and even into modern day because people didn't take the eyewitness experiences of the formerly enslaved seriously, and also weren't able to read between the lines whenever they were talking to white interviewers and maybe kind of downplaying some of the things that they
Yeah.
experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. What's one of the interviewers? Oh my goodness, their eyes were watching God. Like, what's her name?
Oh, Zora Neale Hurston.
During,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, she was one of the interviewers, and even some you can see even the self hate that comes across when you're
Yes.
reading it, and that's really hard to read because um, when this is all that you know, when this brutality is all that you know, and you've been told that you are nothing, that you are evil, that you are barbaric, so a lot of people have ingested that, that self-hate, that indifference, and they will say, they have to do this to us to control us,
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
and it's hard to read those things. And then you look at, there's a lot of people that are doing these interviewers that are still a part of that same system.
Oh, yeah.
They're doing this because they needed a job during the Great Depression,
Mm-hmm.
and so even the way they're communicating, and to, them, you can feel that in some of the writings and some of the recordings. A lot of it is recording the broken language and all of those things. I mean, I'm
Even
telling
like making it more broken. You know what I'm saying?
you.
Like
Yeah,
WUZ and WAS sound
yeah,
the same,
yeah,
but in the recording of the conversation, they're using the WUZ spelling. Like there's a ton of
yeah,
stuff that just sounds really similar if you have a southern accent, that they're
right.
taking the opportunity to make a caricature out of the people whose
Mm,
stories they're recording. Or sometimes their descriptions are like, oh, he looks just like what you would expect a house Negro to look like, or oh, she had really like pale skin, or oh, he looks just like the old renderings of these black gentlemen or like it's very, some of it is just really stereotypical the way that
mm.
they talk about the people that they're interviewing.
Right, right. I'm telling you, one of the things you also talked about, black teachers who fought revisionist history.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to hear you talk a little bit more about that topic and what you shared. I think it's such a timely message when you think about what's happening, to teachers. I'm like, do we understand we would not be the country that we are now without teachers? And if
Yeah.
there are less people going into the teaching field, like what is the game plan? And maybe the plan is really to make people ignorant, to make people dependent. So I think this is something that we are going to really have to, we can't just depend on the school,
Yeah.
the school system, or teachers. And I think teachers are being very creative. I see a lot of teachers who have like basically retired and they're doing history lessons like yourself on the internet, you know,
Mhm.
and doing a phenomenal job, reaching more people that way than they would have in the classroom. When you talk about revisionist history, tell us a little bit about what you shared.
So it kind of goes back to what we were saying before about how people were not making any secret of what
Yeah.
they thought or why they thought it. And
Mhm.
so after the Civil War, moving towards the 20th century, there were a lot of white daughters of the Confederacy who were outright saying, we don't want our Southern
Okay.
children to feel bad about the Confederacy. So
Mhm.
we need to make sure that when we teach about the Civil War, we teach that slavery wasn't that bad, that we seceded because of states' rights, that Northerners imported slaves too, so whatever. And just a lot of the very similar arguments and argumentation. And there's letters that they sent, there's textbooks that they wrote, there's all these, I mean, there's a paper trail of them just really trying to, under the guise of teaching their students patriotism, teaching them white supremacy. And so
Mhm.
then you have these black teachers who are coming up in these other schools and are teaching true history, really trying to render an accurate portrayal of history, and also trying to instill in black students a pride in their people and a pride in their own history. People like Layla Amos Pendleton and Edward A. Johnson and Drusilla Dungy Houston, and everybody knows Carter G. Woodson, and
Yeah.
people who just wrote textbooks, wrote learning resources, wrote, like, they just took it upon themselves. And I feel such a kinship to so many of them because aside from Carter G. Woodson, who has a PhD in history, the rest of them
Yeah.
were just teachers who were
Yeah.
like, something's got to give. Like, something's got to be done
Yeah.
about this in the classroom. I have to write my own resources to introduce to these children and to help give them a better foundation in who they are. Like Garrett King talks about how it was basically a fight for their humanity to teach these students that they're made in God's image and that they have value, and that people who've gone before them who look like them also have value and have done valuable things for American history. And by today's standards, all of these works are incredibly patriotic, like more patriotic than I be feeling sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's not even like, that they're trying to tear down America or anything of that nature. They're really trying to show these black children that America is also their birthright.
Yeah. 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 And it's also like an act of resistance, you know? It's like there's always a remnant. And I even think about even what you're doing now. It's like there's this um active resistance to the normalization of white supremacy and the gaslighting, all of that. And so I would wonder, when you think about just this whole, um how do you see this as an act of resistance that you're doing now?
For me personally, if I can get a little bit personal about my own
Yeah.
history as a teacher, I love teach. Hold, 1 second. Let me get my computer
Okay.
plugged up and then I'll answer.
Okay. No problem.
Almost there. I thought I could make it without disrupting, but
Oh, that's okay. I hear it beeping.
I know. I'm like, did you happen? Did you work? My plug is so finicky that she's just like, will I? Won't I? Okay, I'm gonna be on
I
really
know I
awkward.
have to have like several plugs. Like I'm always having to get um a Apple like charger because I'm always leaving it somewhere and then I find it and then I'm like, okay, where's the cord to that one? Okay.
That's
You know?
that's currently me. Okay. Hopefully I
Okay.
can have enough charge to finish up.
Okay, cool.
Um, I will say for me, so I always taught
Uh,
at white classical schools.
okay.
That was my entire 9 years of teaching experience. It was at 3 or 4 different white classical schools, and I always enjoyed it. I taught my Latin, I taught my medieval history. We
Hmm.
read the Iliad and the Odyssey. It was a really good time. And towards the end of teaching, I started teaching more modern history, modern American history,
Hmm.
and I know. I'm trying to charge my computer and it's not charging.
Oh, okay.
My husband just came in. He got
Okay.
my SOS text.
Oh, he did.
Yes, it kind of like it makes a sound and then it stops.
Okay.
So I don't know what to do.
Okay.
Well, now my
Oh, it disconnected her. Okay, there. Okay, there.
am I back?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
active
actually,
is
it is
higher.
higher. Well, hopefully we can just make it.
Okay.
Okay. Um,
I'm so sorry.
Oh no,
Oh no,
no problem. No problem.
no,
We
we
we're
we're
good.
good. Keep on, I'll be back. Okay.
He's gonna
Um, But I started teaching American history my last year teaching, and these places that had been so excited to kind of have me, I think in classical education, there's not a lot of people who look like me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they were excited to have me because like, oh, we have this black teacher and like she's teaching medieval history and she knows what she's talking about when she's talking about the Carolingian Empire and it's so cool. But then I started teaching American history and I started being more honest about American history and I kind of went on this learning journey in tandem with really starting to teach more modern history than what I had been teaching. And I quickly learned that these people who had approved of me when I was saying one thing and staying in one area, I lost their approval.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never directly asked to leave the classroom, but it was made very clear that I was no longer welcome where I was. And people who live in the South can imagine what that looked like, right? Because it's never like, we want you to leave. It's just, we're going to make it inhospitable for you to stay. Yeah. Yeah. So for
That's so
me,
cool.
and so for me, teaching history online and with a view towards, I mean, I hope that I can go back into the classroom one day. I would love to go back into the classroom one day, but it's this act of resistance against fitting into the box of the acceptable Black woman, of what I was allowed to be as a teacher, who I was allowed to be as a teacher, um and how much of my humanity was allowed to be accepted. It's me saying, no, all of me is created in God's image, and all of me comes to the table when you hire me. And if that's not something that you're excited about, if that's not something that you're enthusiastic about, then I'm not gonna sit at this table. And for some people are called to fight to stay at that table.
Mm.
But with me having my third baby and not knowing that an autism diagnosis was coming down the pike for my middle boy, the timing was for me to go, right? But I mean, I'm hoping that someday I'll get to go back and fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you
Can you
explain
explain
classical
classical
education for
education for
those who
those who don't
know
know
what
what
that
that
is?
is? Yeah, so there's a lot of different schools of thought regarding classical education, but the one that I was taught in was focused on the Association of Classical Christian Schools. And so it focuses on these three different like phases of learning, these three different phases of the way that kids learn. So from the grammar phase to the logic phase to the rhetoric phase, elementary school, middle school, and high school, it focuses on the great books. It focuses on Latin, Greek, and it focuses on basically the history of Western thought. So it really prizes Western thought and Western thinkers.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
that's
good
good.
because I
Because
think
I
some
think some
people. Let's
people, let's
pause for a
pause for a
minute because
minute
we're
because we're
hearing
hearing
feedback, and we
feedback and
don't
we
want
don't want
people to
people to
miss.
miss.
Okay,
Okay,
great. Yeah,
great.
I
Yeah,
was didn't want to
didn't
cut
want
it.
to cut it.
So we got the
So we
last
got the
thought.
last thought.
Let's see.
Okay, now, so it's
That's
on her.
gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, wait a
Okay, wait a
minute.
minute.
Mix.
Fix.
Lauren,
Lauren,
your
your
stop.
stop.
Jasmine,
Jasmine, do you have
earphones?
earphones? I have them on, but I don't think that they're connected. I'm so sorry,
Okay.
guys. Okay.
It's okay. No, you're fine.
No, you're fine. We're gonna have to take this out.
We can
We
mix
can
the parts
mix
of the
part
recording so we can
recorded
still
so we can
listen
still
though.
Yeah.
further.
Okay, so it's that.
Yeah.
It's this.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know what the problem is with it though.
We want this
We want this
good
good.
content.
I know.
Look,
Look, have
Pentecostal
Pentecostal
people say,
say,
the devil trying to get in your computer. We're going to blame it on the devil. So that may be good. I think she's probably going to restart. And if she
Okay,
comes
because
in.
it got weird. I was like, wait a minute, what happened?
Yeah. I think it was going because I think It says Riverside does say that it has better quality if your computer is plugged in the entire time. And so
Oh,
we have to tell people to make sure their computers are plugged in the entire
mm-hmm.
time. 'Cause every time when I get ready to start, it say plug in your computer for better sound quality or something like that. So
Oh, okay. I didn't see that, but yeah.
mhm.
I know I love Riverside altogether. It's a better,
Yeah, I
the
like
whole
it.
review is way better. Way, way, way,
Okay,
way
she's
better.
fixing the mic. She said.
Okay, cool, cool, cool.
I think that was her.
I have
We're
so
about
many
to
things I want to say right now, but I'll wait till
later, later.
later, later, later.
Let's see. I want to talk
Later.
about. I want to talk about the Instagram challenge that she's doing.
Okay.
And then, let's see, there was um, the next.
Ba, 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 ba.
I love the cover for her new book, Crown with Glory.
It is nice.
I'm gonna ask her to tell us a little bit about that one. So I just want to talk about the Crown with Glory, and
Mm-hmm.
then the Instagram challenge.
Cause Sarah be over there giving up all the good stuff.
Mhm.
She probably smiling right now.
I'm like, okay, we gotta like, because I know this is a lot of work putting these sheets together, and so I'm like, we're not gonna do that many. I told her I was gonna tell you that we need to try to do a cultural view every
Yes.
quarter, and so
Yep.
we're overdue for a cultural view. So,
Yep.
I think I think there's a couple things we have Elizabeth working on, so we need to
We
get
already
one
have
of
it. Hmm.
those. Okay, cool,
We
cool.
have two that we could do right now. I just wanted when we was finished, I was gonna ask. I think I remember who you said was involved in it, but I just want to
Okay.
make sure the
Yeah,
people
I
are
think we
still
should
in.
do one of those knocks.
Yeah.
So,
Sarah got us looking real good.
oh, good,
The
good.
scheduling is scheduling.
The scheduling. The podcast is fine. Yeah, somebody I don't have her text. Maybe somebody can text her just to see. Um,
Sarah, you
and
have
just
her. I know I
just to
have an
check.
email, I think.
Oh, oh, that's Sarah.
E- Oh,
Oh, here she comes.
oh, okay.
I'm so sorry, guys.
Okay, you're back. It's
That's
all right. It's all
just
good. It's all good.
my
And you
poor
sound better
husband
too.
is catching the brunt of all of it. He's like, I'm trying to help. I'm like, Jester. Ah!
Oh, this is okay. And you sound much
Oh,
better
it's on.
too.
Oh, I do?
It
Okay,
does.
good. I
Yeah.
think it's
Sounds really
on.
good.
Okay. I'm
Okay.
literally sitting
Thanks,
in my
husband.
in front of my kitchen sink. They said, thanks, husband.
He walked out. He's like, you know what? You know, for
Because I was fussing at him hard. He like moved. He was like, "Oh, I see the problem," and I was like, "I don't want to talk about what the problem is. Just fix it."
oh, my
He was like,
goodness.
"Okay,
But we're almost gonna wrap up, but I wanted
okay,
to hear about the book challenge, and I also want you to tell us about just kind of give a synopsis of Crown with Glory.
yeah,
Yeah,
ooh,
so but I really want to hear about why and also I want to encourage you said you were can you explain because I know some of the audio I wanted you to explain classical education because sometimes
mm-hmm.
we hear that and we're like, oh, that's better, like,
Oh
classical is
yeah,
better, or it seems inclusive, but I hear people say, oh, they're classically trained when they're talking about an actor. And
mm-hmm.
I had a black British woman say, like, that's not inclusive. Like, this is what classically trained, and how we can put that on a pedestal and not realize that it's the classically trained is missing so much diversity and other from others, in
It is.
that. Can you explain that to our audience what classical education is? And I mean, I just had a lot of run-ins with people who are in schools classically trained, like that's one of the schools that they were doing the debate on slavery where you have to be for and against.
Yeah.
I'm like, first of
Uh-huh.
all, I mean, that makes my blood boil that that you would see any debate into the enslavement of human beings, chattel slavery, and what
Hmm.
that generational slavery that you would that someone could even fathom. But it shows you how we have romanticized
Absolutely.
slavery. So explain that what classical is, and
Hmm.
then I want you to explain the Reading Everybody Black Challenge.
Yeah. So, and it dovetails really well actually, because
Okay.
classical education, it has a lot of elements, but the major one is the entering into the conversation with the great books,
Uh-huh.
with the great thinkers, with the great philosophers. And the great books, great thinkers, great philosophers that are in the canon don't look like me or you.
Right. Right.
And so it's really prizing and conserving Western thought. And by
Mm.
Western thought, really, it's white
Yeah.
thought.
Hmm.
And that's one of the core tenets of classical education. Now, I will have a caveat because I know that a lot of Be the Bridge people are homeschoolers who use Charlotte Mason.
Yeah.
Charlotte Mason is a classical strain, right? Like that's one
Right.
type of classical education. And so I wasn't teaching in the Charlotte Mason strain. I was teaching in the Association of Classical Christian Schools strain, which some classical educators kind of look down their nose at us and are like, that's neoclassical education. So
Oh,
there's all of this, like, there's
wow.
all this different lingo and language.
Okay.
Heritage Mom Blog on Instagram, Amber, she is a Charlotte Mason mom and she describes herself as like Charlotte Mason with an afro. I love her. And I
Okay.
love how she really cultivates a list of great books and great thinkers that are more reflective of the diversity that we have in the world. She works really hard at that. And so there are several Charlotte Mason homeschoolers in particular that I follow that are just a balm to my soul after a
Oh,
decade in
yeah.
classical education.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm so glad that the Lord gave you free.
Yes. Yes. He did. He did.
Out of that. But then, I look at what you're doing now. Like you said, I hope to one day go back in the classroom. And I'm
Hmm.
like, you have created your classroom. You know, you are educating through the writings that you're doing, through your books that you're writing, through how you're educating your family. So you are a teacher, like you are teaching the masses. You're probably reaching more people now than you would have within the classroom, and you're helping those who are blind to the fact that they are missing information.
Yeah.
So I mean, I love it. Like I love that the fact that you're like, wait a minute, like I'm missing something here and I'm going to do something about it. And I'm not just going to sit silent or sit in shame or because I didn't know, but like, you know
Right.
what? I'm going to make sure that others know what I didn't know. Tell me a little bit about the book that you have coming out, Crowned with Glory, How Proclaiming the Truth of Black Dignity Has Shaped American History. I know it's probably, we've talked about it a little bit, but just in
Yeah.
a little more in detail.
It's about Black Christian resistance to chattel slavery in all of its forms.
Okay.
And so we talk about Nat Turner's revolt, and then we talk about free people in the North who are abolitionists. We talk about people in the South who ran away. We talk about this whole thing in the South of like where people ran away for a few days called lying out, but then came back.
Mm,
We talk about
mm,
it's kind of a survey, right? Like a historical survey, but I hope that it also reads like a story. I am a fiction writer at heart. I have when I was a little girl, when you would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would be like a writer and a teacher.
right.
Um and but I was supposed to be writing the next great American novel. Um we'll see if that ever
Okay.
actually happens. But that's
Okay.
what I'm supposed to be doing. But I do have a lot more moments of storytelling in
Right.
Chronicler that I'm really excited about.
Right, right. And then your first the book that you just came out with, the one Never Cast Out, how the
Hmm.
gospel puts an end to the story of shame. That one right there, tell me a little bit more about that particular book.
That one was interesting because I actually approached the publisher
Uh,
to sign me for Carved in Ebony, the book that came before it.
okay.
And they were like, we're not sure it's a good fit. And Carved in Ebony was my first and only time ever having multiple publishers interested in my project. And so that was my book where I was like, ooh, I'm fancy. Like, I got options. And so they
Love it.
they knew that I had options, and so they were like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I don't feel bad saying no to this book. We want you to write this other book." And my editor for that, Ashley Gorman, had been reading my writing for years, and she was like, "I see a common thread of you really grappling with shame, and I would love you to write a book about that." And really, it was her holding my hand. I would have never written that book otherwise. But it has a lot of personal testimony about shame and how it's impacted my life, and really how the gospel of Christ has been the answer to not eradicating it completely, because I don't know that I'll get there before glory, but turning the volume down a
Mhm.
lot.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. I love what you're doing. I think you give hope to a lot of people that have been missing information
Hmm.
within their upbringing, but how God can redeem that
Oh,
and
yeah.
restore that, and look at you now, and the pathway that you're creating, not just for others, but also for your children,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so it's going to look different for them than what it looked for you. And God will usually, like you said, I always tell people, I said, you know what? We're not going to convince everyone. Like
Yeah.
everybody's not going to get it. Everybody's not going to get it. And so once you resolve that with yourself, that everybody's not going to get it, you also resolve, but you know what? There will be some. You
Yeah.
know, there will be
Absolutely.
a remnant. And you talk about the remnants. Like this whole thing that you're talking about, like that blew my mind. Like you said, there were other missionaries on the ground
Hmm.
that looked like me that were trying to talk about what was happening in the Congo. And I
Yeah.
know this probably repeats itself throughout history, but we're given one version of
Yes.
history, that revisionist history, where those stories are not told, their stories are hidden. And you think about the movie Hidden Figures and how so many
Hmm.
people knew that story. I mean, Katherine Johnson was still alive.
Yeah.
Her family, living and breathing. I think she only recently passed.
Oh, just. I think it was
Yeah,
2020.
yeah,
It was recent.
recent. But that story that so many people hadn't heard of. And there's so many stories just like that people need to be taught because it makes us better. It makes us whole. Like,
Yeah.
and so we should know that and understand that. And just if our history makes you feel bad, you have to ask yourself why,
Yeah.
and how do I get over it? It's not really our problem, but it's like
Hmm.
how do I get over this feeling of shame and guilt where we have this like collective justice together, this collective lament to say, you know what, this is bad,
Hmm.
but this is what this can look like on the other side to make sure that this doesn't happen again. You know,
Absolutely.
so I
Absolutely.
think there's something to that. What are some things now that you may be lamenting? What is something that you're lamenting right now?
Right now, I think a lot about the Black maternal mortality rate in
Mm,
Mississippi.
yeah,
It is abysmal. I think that we had passed Louisiana for the bleakest stats. I think Black women in Mississippi, regardless of socioeconomic status, because people love to bring that up,
yeah,
are more than four times more likely to die in childbirth than their white counterparts.
yeah,
And I've given birth to two children in Mississippi.
yeah,
And it is such a, while Christians are celebrating the fact that in my state, abortion is, I mean, we in there. Like,
yeah, yeah.
Christians have gotten what they desired from
Yeah,
abortion legislation in my state.
right, right.
Um, but then to sit back and watch while the Black maternal mortality rate and the Black fetal mortality rate are going through the roof, I lament that. I
Yeah.
lament that.
I lament that with you, because I think we're sometimes more concerned about birth than life,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's a big thing. I was just actually right before you were talking, I was looking at a stat like how it's increased since 2021.
It has,
You know,
yes.
and we have the highest in general infant mortality rate than any other developed country, you know,
Yes.
and so this is connected to our healthcare system. This is
Mm-hmm.
connected to access. This is connected to racism, and
Yes.
and when you start talking about the communities that are impacted by this the most, and so we have to bring attention to this, because like you cannot just be settled like that. Okay, there's no abortion, but this is what's happening, on
Right.
the other side of this. And so we have to be concerned about it all. And so, what are some things, that are bringing you hope, in this season?
I just met a Black doula.
Oh,
And I just was so excited. I'm done having children,
okay.
unless Lord does some supernatural act to supersede medical interventions that we have done. We are done. We are finished. Um, but I
Yeah.
love birth so much. And so yeah, to meeting a Black doula, and doulas and midwives are a huge part of
Mm,
ending this crisis, there of seeing to this crisis. We see such better outcomes when doulas
yeah.
and midwives are involved. And when my children are older, I would love to become a doula. Um, Another thing that gives me joy, my little boy, we've been reading a bunch of like Black history graphic novels lately,
Okay.
and my oldest is 6. And we were sitting at the doctor's office the other day, and he saw this picture of like Harriet Tubman, and he's like, "Who is that?" I was like, "Oh, that's Harriet Tubman." And tell me something about her. I told him a little something. And he goes, "Man, you just know everything about Black history, don't you?" I loved it so much because I was like, he
Ah,
thinks I know everything. Like he
well,
was just like, "Wow, you love that, don't you?" And I was like, "I do."
I mean, and she was a woman of faith.
She
I think
was, she
just
was.
just a couple of days ago, I want to say that they celebrated Harriet Tubman Day. This recognized in certain cities, just for her contributions,
Mm-hmm.
to this country. She served as a general also,
Yeah.
along with her, going back because of the horrors of enslavement and what she had been a part of and witnessed. That's why she kept going back,
Mm-hmm.
and then the crazy thing about her is, and when people say, okay, this country was founded on Christian principles or Christian, like Judeo-Christian value, I would push back on that, but we don't have time.
Don't
That's
put that on. Don't put that on Jesus.
don't
Don't
put
put
that.
that on Jesus.
Exactly, please don't. But this lady, when you look at the wanted posters for her, they called her Moses.
Yep.
And it just shows you how far from the Christian faith that the so-called Christians have
Mm-hmm.
become. And when you read, the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, and haven't, like, I don't know anything about this, country's Christian values,
Yep.
the
Yep.
slave holding Christian,
Yep.
like how he talks about when his, you know, the slave master, when it became a Christian, they were excited that he was going to live into what Christian values should be by setting them free, or being
Mm-hmm.
kind and just and generous, demonstrating the fruits of the spirit, but yet became more cruel.
Even crueler. Yep.
And so there's something that we have to reckon with that, and I think many of us, not just our Black brothers and sisters, but I think all of our brothers and sisters, including our white brothers, are reckoning with that. People are leaning into this conversation. People are wanting to know. I think the thing that we have to do as leaders in this work is to give people the how.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
of what to say, what to do, because I think some people, they could become paralyzed when so much stuff is happening culturally. People don't know what to do, and so I like conversations like this. I like meeting other activists, educators, whatever, just people, the body of Christ, like whatever you
Mm-hmm.
want to call us,
Mhm.
reconcilers, whatever it is, but just where we can really have this collective strategy of how we lead people toward restoration,
Yeah, absolutely.
and true redemption. So thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your wisdom with our community. It's Jasmine Holmes. You can follow her on Instagram. We'll have everything listed in the show notes. And her book that's coming out is Crowned with Glory: How Proclaiming the Truth of Black Dignity Has Shaped American History. You can also read some of her latest books, Never Cast Out: How the Gospel Puts an End to the Story of Shame, and then Carved from Ebony. Such richness that God is using you to demonstrate and to do in for such a time as this, so thank you for being in the work with so many that came before us and with so many who are here with us now. So it takes what you say, it takes a village, it takes an army.
Mhm.